Hello, everyone. This is David Newton speaking, and we have the Ahead of the Game with Rick and David, the podcast series. And today we have a special guest, Wendy Lloyd Curley, who is a strategic networker and BNI owner. Hello, Wendy.
Hi, David. Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Hey, g'day.
And how you doing, Rick? How's things going over there?
Mate, can I just tell you, summer is the best country to live in.
There we go. Rubbing it in for us down here in the down under, right? There you go. Okay. Well, Wendy, thank you for coming on board today. First of all, can you explain a little bit about BNI owner, strategic networking? How did this all come about?
It'd be a pleasure. So let's see. In a nutshell, I'll give you a short background. Early on in Wendy's life, she was a hospitality worker. And the best hospitality worker in the world, might I add. So I learned to serve people. I love to serve people. After that, I decided to go into more of a business environment. I got some degrees and I went into business and I worked in telecommunications, which gave me, both in the US and in Australia, a kind of a vision as to how businesses work, how large corporates work, and then how supplier chains work within that environment. Then I decided that I didn't quite like that environment. It wasn't the place for me. Working in a corporate environment was uncomfortable, and I decided to leave it, and I didn't know what I was leaving it for. So I started a couple of different
lanyards. Was that a part of the problem?
Pardon?
Too many people wearing lanyards?
You know what? It might have been lanyards related, but you know what? The higher I got up in the organizations, and I worked in telecommunications, the more I realized that I wasn't making any of the decisions. No matter what I was doing, whether I had to talk to my boss, they weren't making the decisions. And then the people below me were relying on me to support them, and I couldn't to my satisfaction because of the way that a corporate governance was working. And perhaps it was the company I worked for, but nonetheless, it wasn't the way that I wanted to work. So when I left, I started two companies, and one of them was a .com. I basically wanted to start something. You know how they always say that if you do what you love, you're never going to work another day in your life.
Yeah.
Well, they were lying, first of all. They were definitely lying. But I decided to combine my love for marketing, which I had developed over the years, with my love for music, which I have as part of my life since I can remember. And I put together a .com that was related to the music industry. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And for 3 years, I had sweat equity built into this company. Every dollar that I earned, I put back into it. And it was a lot of fun, but also really daunting. And so I ended up kind of evaluating my life at the end of those 3 years and realizing that the other business that I had started on the side was actually doing quite well. And it was completely by accident. It was a multi-level marketing company, and it was selling some candles and homewares and fragrances that I had been using myself since, well, for at least 10 years. And the business was doing really well. And so I decided to take that up for 10 years. I was running that. And this is where I get to the point of your question. I ended up joining a networking organization called BNI. And what BNI did for my business as a multi-level marketer was turn it into a small business that was truly one I could be proud of. So I was running it as a multi-level marketing business without other people being involved. And then when I started being surrounded by other business owners, I started to run the business differently. I became more aware of what I needed to do strategically: marketing, finance, branding, promotion, sales. I learned sales skills like I had never really experienced before. And so my experience in BNI was really wonderful for my candle business. And it was so good that I started teaching other people how to do it too. I started becoming one of the people who would train others in how to get the most out of their BNI membership.
Oh, okay. And just for those people who don't know what BNI means.
Oh, thank you very much. I was about to go there. Time out. The whole audience is going, who's BNI?
I love it. I love it. Well, BNI stands for Business Network International. It
Okay.
is a 39-year-old organization that started with one group called a chapter in Southern California, and it has grown to be over 11,000 groups worldwide in 77 countries and with over 320,000 members. So each member is part of one of those groups or one of those chapters, and each chapter only has one person from each profession in that chapter. The benefit being that you can work in a competition-free environment with a more collaborative group of people, get to know, like, and trust them over time, and help build their businesses through learning about each other. It's a fantastic model.
Right, great.
So
what happened with you? How did you get into, say, the business of owning one of those?
Well, it was around 2020. It wasn't around 2020. In 2020. I'll be specific. How about that? In 2020, the multi-level marketing company that I was associated with changed its business model, as they are prone to do. And that significantly impacted people at the higher levels of that organization, which included me. And I needed to make a change. So this ties two things together. It ties strategic networking and BNI together. I decided that I needed to completely move and remove myself from the multi-level world and instead figure out what the next step for me was. And what I knew I was really good at was networking and teaching other people how to do it. And what I decided I needed to do in order to feel comfortable with another business associated with this, and I'll take a step back. Remember how I said there were 300,000 members?
Yeah.
Well, there's 8 billion people. And, and if you take 300,000 minus 8 billion, you've still got a lot of people that don't know how to do networking very well. And so I figured there was a market for this because I had seen people be uncomfortable networking, not enjoy doing it, and avoid it at all costs because they weren't seeing the benefits. So I decided the best thing to do was to write a book. I got myself a business coach who knew how to write books. I ended up putting together an outline for it. I went away on my own little book retreat during COVID. And I dictated this book to myself, and then I edited it for about 6 or 7 months. The result was my book called Stop Wasting Your Time Networking.
Oh, wow.
And
Do you have a copy of that right here?
I do. I brought one right there for you. So it's Stop Wasting Your Time Networking, the ultimate guide to marketing your business through personal connections.
Wow.
And
yeah, I thought it was a great title, actually, when I saw that.
Thanks, Rick. Well, I thought of that when I was going for a walk with my dog one day, and I figured that would do very nicely because it was cheeky. And Australians like to be cheeky, and I'm pretty Aussie now.
Open in the eyes and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong.
That's right. Anyway, that developed a framework. So this framework is what I decided I would leave my BNI seat as Wendy the Candle Lady, and I would become Wendy the Strategic Networker. And I would use the framework and the masterclass I had developed and all of the work that I would do to support corporates and small business in learning how to do strategic networking. And that was how I got introduced to BNI as a business. One of the executive directors here in Sydney said to me, Wendy, I like what you're doing. I like what you're thinking of, and it sounds all good. You know what you should do? You should buy a BNI. And I said, I don't understand what you mean. I want to be a referral partner with you. I want to share clients. When they're not ready for you, you give them to me. When I'm done with them, they'll want you back. And he said, Wendy, you should think about buying a BNI. So 3.5 years ago, I bought BNI Sydney Northeast. It's a franchise. It happened to be available, and I knew the owner. It was the right time for him. It was the right time for me. And for the last 3.5 years, I've done both. I've run my master classes and I continue to do keynote speaking around strategic networking. And
wow.
I've been running BNI Sydney Northeast and growing it and developing that on a global scale as well. So,
Wow.
wow, that was a long answer. You might want to cut that.
No. We won't cut that. No. That's fantastic. So you're doing professional speaking to a lot of these companies that are coming along to some of your events, or?
Well, I do professional speaking along BNI all the time. So yes, the answer is
Uh-huh.
yes there. But when it comes to the keynotes around strategic networking, I really don't focus on the long-term relationships that BNI is known for.
Right.
Instead, I focus on the walking into a room where there are a lot of people and you don't know any of them. How do you strategically network within that group? So I kind of teach people who are uncomfortable networking how to walk into a chamber meeting or an industry luncheon or some sort of a convention environment and be able to strategically make connections that will help them.
Is that something you also teach to people who are in online business networking meetings, like where they have breakout rooms, that sort of thing as well?
100%. So I consider my specialty to be in-person networking, and in-person includes online, like what we're doing right now,
Okay.
because we're able to
Right.
look at each other and converse and go into those breakout rooms. You need to know what questions to ask.
Rick, what kind of questions do you ask when you go to networking meetings?
Well, what I was just thinking is like those business networking meetings, the same old thing where, unless it's changed, they get a room, everybody gets in, you walk in, you get a little drink with a napkin under it. You stand around the whole night with a little drink with a napkin under it. And we all look at each other and smile and pretend like, heck, 15 more minutes and I can go home. Now, if we just talk about the setup, and we've all been into that kind of meeting, right? We all sort of stand around and smile. Give me a couple of concrete things as to how you might change the frame up of that for people who are like watching this and going, okay, we've all been to those things. They're really boring. You're going to plan on one's coming up, Wendy. Tell me 2 or 3 things that people might want to do differently to make that a more enjoyable experience.
Okay, I love it. Well, before the meeting, before you go, before you even walk in, know who you would like to meet.
Right.
So that's probably the strategic part of strategic networking is knowing who you want to meet. And this
Uh-huh.
takes evaluation. And I like to break it into 5 people. Of course, you want to meet your target market. If you're selling, you want to meet your target market. But networking isn't about that. And the odds of walking into a room like that and meeting people who immediately want to buy from you are very low.
Yeah.
And that's not what networking is about. Networking is about connecting with people who might get you to your target market one day. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, knowing who your target market is. Also, knowing who you would be able to refer business to. So, as a business coach, for example, a business coach would walk in knowing that some of their clients are going to need good bookkeepers, good accountants, good financial planners, possibly good marketing and branding experts or social media. They can work on their business strategies, but they need specialists to recommend. So if they don't have all of those people in their environment, in their network, they can continue to use networking opportunities to meet people who they can then recommend to their clients. So it's
Right.
one of the most powerful people to meet is the people that you can possibly give to. And likewise, you could strategically consider who are the people who might recommend you? Who are the people who you could meet that might need your services for their clients? And that's often a more difficult question to answer. And so I coach people on going through that process to figure it out. It's easy for us to think about who we want to recommend, but not necessarily easy for us to think about who would recommend our services. And so I work through that as part of the process. And so just knowing those 3 people automatically will start you on a good path when you go into a networking environment. The second part of the preparation might be researching specifically who you'd like to meet in those areas. Would you like an introduction to a specific photographer or a specific engineer or a specific architect? someone you've been trying to meet for a long time. Because when you meet someone casually and start talking to them, they want to help you. You want to help them. You might as well have that people that are going to be helpful for you right here in your head, so that when the right opportunity presents itself, that's good.
Could that be like recommending people that if you wanted to meet a CEO of a particular company who's pretty high up and they've got thousands of people, millions of people underneath them, is that sort of thing? Is that the sort of thing you also work on as well?
Well, you could do, of course, because it depends on what you're having. Because the second part of Rick's question is, what else do you do there? What are two concrete things? Well, one is prepare, and two is then have good questions. Having
Right.
good questions for people, and instead of asking what they do, find out why they're there. How often have they come to this? What attracts them to this group? If they've never been there before, might ask them, how did you get invited? What are you hoping to get out of it? Having some more interesting questions than just what do you do, and letting people do an elevator pitch back to you is really important, I think. And starting a conversation to figure out where are some connections that you could help them with.
I always think a great question is, hello, why would you like to speak to me?
Well, and my answer to that would be, I don't know, tell me a story.
There we go.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. Does it still, it's been a while since I've been in corporate anything. And in the old days, like everybody would hand out their business cards and you collect a whole bunch of business cards, which of course go to the dumpster on the way out, right? So does everybody still do the whole business cards thing, and do you recommend that? Or are people more into QR codes now, or just writing on a scrap of paper, or saying, like I say to people, they've got a business card, like, go, no, just find me on the internet, because it was on the internet. They're pretty easy to find, you know what I mean?
Well,
so what is the thing about that?
I tell you, the reason I still like a business card is because those are the people I'm going to follow up with. And I don't ask for anybody's business card unless I plan on following up with them. And I don't give my business card unless I'm asked for it. So I do think that they're important. And I think that it pays to really invest in them. But there is nothing like having your LinkedIn right on your phone and being able to also connect with them socially there, because that enables you to really voyeur on each other quite nicely and find out if there are more connections that can be made. So I do recommend LinkedIn. And I also have a hint about LinkedIn. Always leave the meeting and then write to the person you've connected with and say, it was great to meet you at such and such an event tonight, because then you will always remember where you met them.
Oh, good point. Yeah, excellent.
Do you know, so I got to tell you, look, only the other day, someone showed me something which was really brilliant, right? And I thought, I've got to share it with you. So, you know how we all turn on our phones and we all have our dates or whatever it is, the icons, right? Well, mine's my QR code. So my default screen is just my QR code. So people say, who are you? I say, oh, don't take a picture of me. And as soon as I take a picture of my QR code, it's just the default screen. It's my QR code. It's a really great way. It's a little bit different. Not everybody does it. Everybody's got that little killer go, click, and they know everything about me just from, there we go. It's just
absolutely
gets to the nuts and bolts really quick, do you know what I mean?
That's a brilliant idea. I like it.
Yeah, someone showed me that. I thought it was great. So now my QR code is always on my phone. When everybody says, what do you do? How do I do this? And they click that. I go, great, now you can buy me dinner.
I love it.
Yeah, but it was just funny because I just found out about that night. I thought, how clever is that? Just doing
yes,
that.
A lot of people will share the LinkedIn tricks with you about the QR code on LinkedIn and how you can scan people. But there are also other tools, and maybe this is your QR code, where it'll take you to the website and give you a contact card and do all of that. I don't necessarily want to give all of that away to someone I've just met. I want them to do a little bit of digging, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah, very good point.
Yeah, and it's like, do you usually have, I always think it's really important, right, that people have on their business card, like what they do. I mean, how often do you look at a business card that's 5 years old, says the Merchant Trident Group, John Brown, and you're thinking, what is the Merchant Trident Group doing? Who's John Brown? You know, we all have that. It's kind of like, you know, I bury people in a box or something. I mean, at least tell me what you do. Do you know what I mean? Because later on, you're looking for the electrician or the plumber. You can't remember the plumber's name. You got a guy here called John Smith, and you don't want to ring up John Smith and say, "Excuse me, John, are you the plumber?"
That's exactly right.
That's why I have
I
my
agree. I
photo
think
on. Yeah, I have my photo on my business card because a lot of people forget names and faces. Because if someone meets you on a plane and you hand them your card, and I've got my link tree on that one as well as my YouTube thing, just the most important stuff and my phone number, and that's it. I
Yeah,
believe that they'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember meeting that guy then," and sometimes people do follow up, some don't. That's okay, but you just never know, and you've got to have that available opportunity as well. I've been in cafes where I overhear someone talking about X, Y, Z, and I said, "Oh, you might know such and such. Here's my card." Deliberately interrupt them, and it might be rude, but on the other hand, I've only got like 2 minutes to do it. There's a lot of opportunities there, and every single day where you can meet people just by accident.
yeah, yeah.
You know, you just don't
so.
know who those people are.
Before David, you asked me about if you met someone who had, a company, a big corporate with 1,000 employees and whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
What would a small business be able to talk to them about, for example? And I think that my answer for that is small business may be small, meaning not a lot of people or perhaps not a lot of turnover, but their target market might be large corporates.
Absolutely.
And in my instance, for an example, when I meet with a large corporate and a CEO or anybody on the C-suite at the high level,
Yeah.
having a conversation with them about how they encourage people to bring in leads to their business throughout their employee base, because literally 1,000 employees can be part of their marketing team if they understand what they do and who they do it for. Because when they go, like the IT team can go out to an IT conference or to work in an industry event, and if they understand what their company does and who they do it for, they can actually be part of that sales cycle, versus only having the sales and marketing people be aware of that skill. So that's an example of something that I, as a small business, am able to provide to them. So I think all small businesses need to figure out who their target market is and make that link.
And there's also the point of some of these companies, if they're so big, how does anybody even approach them these days? Because nobody is on a switchboard these days. They're all directly on mobile phones. And if you did want to speak to, and I've known this because we've done a lot of telemarketing in the past, right?
Yep.
And I noticed a transition from about 20 odd years ago where people all of a sudden, one moment, there was no inbound secretary that would take the phone call. It all went to individual mobile phone numbers. So you can't even get through to the EA or PA of the CEO or CFO to get switched through because those people are all on separate communications or not even in the same room.
Which is why it matters that you meet them and link with them and connect with them in a good, positive way. Yeah.
Exactly. So the whole landscape's changing quite well. It has changed dramatically a lot over the last 2 decades. What have you noticed when you're dealing with some big organisations, Rick? Is that something like that you've encountered?
Yeah, but and I was just thinking as we've been chatting, right, and how you send employees off, Dave and Wendy, then you go, oh, you're going to go to an accounting networking event and meet some accountants or something, right?
Yeah.
You've got to tell people, I reckon, the tree out of the forest. Because if you go, did you meet some accountants? They'll say yes. I would be saying this. If I had accounting staff, I'd say, you're all going to the accounting annual meeting. Here's what you've got to do. You're going to come back and you've met one accountant and you've got to come back with one process or system that they do more efficiently than our company does. And that's your mission. To meet all these accountants, or I only keep you meeting doctors or you meeting this, right? Come back with one system or process, because now you're giving people a subject to talk about and they're not going to be embarrassed and say, my boss has said that your accounting company probably has one system that's better than ours. What do you guys do differently from us? Blah, 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 blah. But not only to get the conversation going, it's an icebreaker, but then your company makes more money because you're stealing the secrets from the other company. They don't even know it.
That's exactly right. And you know what? Those are the two other people that I didn't mention that you would want to meet, your competitors and your collaborators.
Yeah.
Because the chances are your competitors will have those sorts of conversations with you. And they may turn into collaborators, because it might be that what you do and who you do it for is slightly different than who they work for.
Yeah.
So you can end up collaborating with people who are ultimately your competitors.
Yeah. Yeah, what
Yeah.
happens
Yeah,
is
but
even when you steal all
specialising.
these great, even when you steal all the great ideas, right? People go, "Oh, it's all too hard. Can you come and do it with me?" People always want to collaborate because it's all too hard. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Have there been any standouts that you've had since you've taken on a BNI ownership there of the franchise? Anything that's been standout memory in the last few years?
Well, there are 300 examples in my region of people who have changed the way that they do business because of a more strategic approach to what they're doing. And yes, so in particular, I can think of a graphic designer who works fundamentally with a digital marketer, and there's also a printer involved in this little
Oh,
trio,
okay.
and all three of them target the pharmaceuticals industry, and all
Wow.
three of them have different clients within that realm. And so what they've done as they've met each other slowly through joining different chapters at different times is they found that they all had that same target market, and they've begun to actually work specifically to target it. And they've
Wow.
gone to the places where those pharmaceutical companies also network in order to meet new clients and tell good stories that result in ongoing work for them. So uh, that's the really neat thing about BNI that I like, is that the long-term relationships mean that those three, once they know, like, and trust each other, they have found that they can share diaries, share appointments,
Wow.
ask how they can introduce each other to the clients that they already have, and be more strategic in the way that they approach it. So that's one example, and it's resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales for
Wow.
all of them. So yeah, they get the system and the process through their work in BNI, and then they deploy that in order to go outside of the BNI network to work. Yeah.
Right. So, in a sense, if they get a client that comes in that they can't deal with personally, they might be able to deal with a bit of the work, but maybe one of their co-collaborators can deal with another half of it. The third person can deal with another slice of it, and everybody and the customer is still happy.
Yeah, the customer's happy. And then likewise, as the customer gets more comfortable, it might just boomerang back. So
Right.
the one who was able to recommend the printer, then the printer says, okay, this would be great, but don't you think we should look at the design, because the design actually could be thought a little bit differently. I've got a guy that I work with regularly who I know can take this because he specializes in pharmaceuticals. So it just kind of bounces back around through all three of them.
And particularly if we looked at your .com example of earlier on, there's no one specific web designer that I've ever come across who is an answer to everything. So you usually need two or three different ones of them, if not a tribe of them, to get done what you want to. You've probably found the same with that in Rick, with your past experience.
Uh, don't get me started. Don't get me started. My
You have
God.
a .com horror story, Rick.
Oh, damn. So, no sooner, no sooner you think you've got it all sorted, right? Then someone comes in and goes, you ever thought about doing it this way? You think, what a brilliant idea, but God damn, I've just done it this way. You know what I'm saying?
I'm
So then you change it. And then the next person comes in. Oh, if only you'd done it this way. You think, oh, brilliant idea. Do you know what I mean?
I'm
Yeah.
going through that right now, Rick. Right now, I'm going through that with my website.
Shiny object syndrome in close-up form, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I'm only 15, and look how it's aged me. Yeah, just going through all this stuff, right? It's like, yeah, and it's nothing wrong. It's just how the system is, right? So
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Sounds
By the
terrific.
way, Wendy, I have a question for you. BNI meetings. Do you meet monthly, and what time of the day, and how long are the meetings for?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great question. They meet weekly. They meet
Weekly. Okay.
weekly. Most often, they are at about 6:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
Wow.
and they last for 90 minutes. They are attended by between 25 and 100 people each week, and the members attend every week in order to maximize the referrals that are passed. So we've
Wow.
tested it over the years, fortnightly and monthly, and weekly results in it maximizes the referrals that are passed.
6:30 in the morning.
6:30.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would, when I was a member, I'd get up at 4:45. I'd leave my house at 5:45, get to downtown Sydney by 6 in order to set up the room and greet people, because I always like to meet the visitors and the members as they came in, and I think I was naturally meant to be a networker. So
Wow.
yeah.
That
Well,
is
I'm going to
really
be a
early.
morning person, so I don't have to get up at 3:30.
I was never a morning person before either. In fact, I walked into BNI the first time in 2011. And I remember saying to the people who were there that I really was surprised at the energy that they all were having that early in the morning. And I said I would never be able to be a member because I'm a night person. I was in a band. I sold candles. I was doing a lot of things by candlelight, right? So
Wow.
I really didn't think that it was going to be for me. And in the end, it very much was. And I get up kind of naturally at about 5 o'clock now. And
I used to be a member of Business Swap many years ago, and I was a president of one of the clubs, and that was a not-for-profit club, I must admit, but it was really good. But I'll admit also, I was a lot younger then. And we used to get up weekly, and I used to search around for a guest speaker, that sort of thing, every week. So that was one of my goals. It isn't that easy to actually do a lot of that sort of thing every week. But if I do believe one thing is, once you're in the routine, then you're okay. If you lock yourself into a routine of getting up, one day of the week or even 2 days of the week that early, you'll be fine. And I presume you've got more than one meeting to run as well, don't you? Every week, or
I think the best part about about being the franchise owner for this area is, and in fact, just being part of the BNI system is the chapter members run the chapters. All I have to do is teach them how to do it. So
really,
I pull out a manual right now. We've got an operations manual. These are the people we need. These are the roles that they have. This is what they need to do. We train them in how to do that. And I provide support for them, but I don't need to attend every meeting. In fact, I try to only attend one every quarter because I don't want to stifle them with they run the process. So I have a group of people that support me, and I pay them to attend the meetings once a month, just to make sure everything is going the way that it's supposed to, in order to give people value. But I really do love the BNI model because the members run the chapter, not
wow,
the owner. The owner doesn't even select the members. The members select the members. So if I were to meet someone right now who was an architect, and I could tell that person we've got 3 chapters that don't already have an architect in them, I can't place them in one of those chapters. All I can do is recommend that they visit and consider applying, and the membership committee allows them in.
Right.
Okay.
And what that does is it gives the chapter ownership of the decisions to let people in or not. And I really believe that that's another reason for the success of it, because if I were to place people in, they might not like them. It might not be a good business. I might have been just going after the application fee, trying to get the money. Whereas if they let them in, then they've made that decision.
Right.
Yeah, it's like your
So
mother picking your boyfriend.
how do people get in touch with you, Wendy?
Pretty easy. WendyLloydCurley.com will do, but so will strategicnetworking.com.
Oh, great.
And I'm fairly open with my contact details on LinkedIn as well. So I love to connect with people on LinkedIn because, as I said earlier, I can voyeur back and forth. They can look at me and I can look at them. So that's kind of nice.
Well, look, I'll put your link in the comments and everything down below in the description box so that people
Great.
can follow up on you. Any last comments, Rick? Questions to Wendy before we sign off?
Mate, I'm still back at that 6:30 meeting, 6 o'clock meeting start time, right? It's like,
We do have a 10 o'clock one starting, and that was asked for by people who drop kids off at school. they said, listen, we drop kids off at school. We're professionals, but we need that time with our family. And so we said, we'll start one at 10 o'clock. So
Oh,
Well,
well,
I know when David, you mentioned earlier, like you used to be a member of these non-profit groups. So I was thinking, geez, it reminds me of half the businesses I've had.
well, look, the business swap was quite good because we had guest speakers every week. That's the part I liked, So um, I suppose it was the case that was the governance of it at the time. But yes, it didn't stand the test of time because, like a lot of things, committees usually don't agree with each other. So yes, that's probably the big issue. Whereas the for-profit model, you don't get those committee issues. Or at least I don't hope you get those committee issues.
no, you don't. And we, we have transitions of leadership so that people don't feel like they're being taken advantage of, that, everybody shares in the load. Whereas in a lot of not-for-profits and in organizations like chambers, sometimes a few people carry the load for a long time and they get burned out. So, yeah.
Very, very true. Very true. They'll be in that position for a very long time. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you once again, Wendy. Thank you, Rick, for being here again as well too. And I'll sign off today. I'd like to say it's been wonderful hearing from you, and we'd love to have you back again sometime in the future, talking more about these experiences at a later stage, maybe some more in-depth material on the networking and so forth down the track. And thank you also to our viewers and our lovely audience that keep turning up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time.
See you next time.